This is DJ. Sorry we could not be in class today. The three of us are actually at a conference. But happy last class. We have decided to look at the Greek life office here at Pacific for our task force paper. And part of the reason why is currently here at Pacific, 18% of the student population, undergrads only, are part of a social Greek organization. And so with almost a fifth of the campus working with one office, we want to make sure that our practices and our services to these students are at its highest level. Nationally, Greek life has been in the headlines for some negative things, especially within the last few months, regarding domestic violence, sexual assault, rape, alcohol misuse, and hazing. And so campuses and headquarters are starting to really have the conversation of what is the purpose of these organizations and is it really benefiting our students. And so here at Pacific, we want to make sure that we are a step ahead of that conversation. Luckily, we haven't had scenarios as grave as these in the headlines, but we want to continue the good work that we're doing and make sure that we are leading that conversation and really the positive driving force for our students. The three of us, myself, Katie, and Michael, are all members of national organizations. We joined in our undergrad, and currently here at Pacific, we work with these students, and so through our experiences both here at Pacific and elsewhere nationwide, we have some pretty good insight as to what best practices could be and what we could implement here on Pacific to only make things better.
So to provide a little historical context, fraternities have existed since 1776 when the first organization, Phi Beta Kappa, was formed at the College of William and Mary. That organization is currently considered an honorary organization, but there's as of now, over 100 different national organizations in existence or regional organizations. For fraternity and sorority at Pacific, the first organization was the Arcanian Literary Society, which later became Alpha Kappa Phi, and that started at Pacific in 1854. And there's been a whole history of different organizations coming on campus and leaving and whatnot, which is fairly consistent with most other universities. But right now we have 12 organizations, and these fall under 3 different councils. So there's the Interfraternity Council, which oversees 4 fraternities that are historically Judeo-Christian in foundation. There's the Multicultural Greek Council, which oversees 4 organizations that have a cultural association with them. For example, Omega Delta Phi Fraternity Incorporated is a multicultural group, where Gamma Alpha Omega Sorority Incorporated is a Latina-founded sorority. And then there's the Panhellenic Association, which oversees 4 organizations that have a Judeo-Christian foundation as well, and those are just women's-only organizations. And then, as well as there's provide a little structure about the office. The Greek Life office here has 2 professionals, an assistant director or coordinator, as well as 6 graduate assistants that help provide support and education for the community here at Pacific. So for our first recommendation, we want to create a task force to compare recruitment models. Currently, Pacific operates under deferred recruitment, in which a student has to have 12 credit hours completed and a 2.5 cumulative GPA to be able to participate in recruitment. So this means that most students are not able to join until their winter or spring semester here at Pacific. So in order to help kind of understand if this is really what's best for the community, we want to create a task force that would include student representatives and administrators that will allow them to see different recruitment models across the country at similar institutions and figure out which ones, based off of research and based off of what works at other places, could potentially benefit Pacific here. For the second recommendation, we also want to create a task force that examines formal recruitment for sororities. So sororities have to participate in a formal recruitment process as headlined by the National Panhellenic Conference, which kind of requires them to go through this intensive weekend-long recruitment system. This involves recruitment counselors who are students in the sororities now that disaffiliate temporarily to assist. The Panhellenic Association has an executive council that oversees and helps with recruitment, as well as there's also staff members that assist in this process as well. So there's a lot of different variation in recruitment across different universities, and to see if our recruitment system is the best, we want to create a task force that'll be looking at these different recruitment systems for formal recruitment at other schools and figure out what works best there and see what we can bring to Pacific to help provide reform and make sure that everyone has a really positive recruitment experience. And for the third recommendation, we also, historically there's been low representation of students of color in the Fraternity Council and Panhellenic Association organizations. as well as students of color in general, tend to be less of a student population, less membership in fraternities and sororities. So in order to help that, we want to increase the recruitment and retention of this. This kind of supports a couple of Pacific's different ideas of making sure that we help students have intercultural global perspectives, and it helps students as well learn how to work with a diverse workforce if they're a member of a diverse organization. So to help with this, we want to perform research around students of color and understand what their perceptions of Greek life are. So this would include both students of color who have joined an organization and students of color who are not currently affiliated, understand kind of what their perceptions of Greek life are and what's led them to either joining an organization or not joining an organization. From this, we want to then develop new programs or modify programs to make sure that we're creating a supportive environment for all students here at Pacific, and also look at our marketing materials and make sure that our marketing materials create a supportive and inclusive community for the students here.
Another option to that is to really look and see if we are providing things that are representative of the students we're serving. Pacific has known to have a really diverse student population when looking at race and ethnicity, and so we want to make sure that those students feel that Greek life is a welcoming and positive option for them, and that might have to lead us to having more organizations come onto campus. And the organizations I'm talking about are ones that are specifically founded and based with a cultural identity. And so what we are thinking of doing is creating a survey to see basically student satisfaction with Greek life here. We know that our partners with the Multicultural Center have a lot of student groups that are identity-based and culturally driven, and they put on a lot of programs throughout the year. And so we want to make sure that they also see that there's a potential to do that with Greek life. A lot of our culturally based organizations throughout this nation have a long history of membership, and so their alumni involvement is sometimes greater than their undergraduate because they understand the longevity of membership, and so that's a really great opportunity for our students here. And so we'd be looking at maybe bringing on organizations on campus that our students want because they feel that they would be best represented in that space.
On top of recruitment, though, it's also important for us to make sure that we're providing education to each of the members who join a fraternity and sorority here. Currently at Pacific, we have a new member institute, which educates each of the new members a little bit about what the community stands for and kind of provides general education on alcohol and hazing awareness like that. It's about a 5-hour retreat that students attend, but this isn't necessarily very effective because they come for one day and then they forget about it later on. So we want to change the system up so that it's providing better education for students overall. This would be moving from a 5-hour retreat to individual sessions that each student would go and attend. So instead of all of the students attending one group, they would be divided into 5 groups that would be co-taught by both a grad student and most likely a student like peer as well. And these would cover an introduction to the community and what we stand for here at Pacific. It would cover topics along community service and why it's important to be involved and give back. It would go over leadership, and it would go over just kind of all the basis and general understanding of what they're going to be experiencing here as a fraternity or sorority member at Pacific. And it would also end with Title IX training, which is an important part for our community to be aware of, as well as for our general students to be aware of that training as well. So this would be a 5-week-long seminar as compared to just a 5-hour retreat. And it would help provide students with a better experience in fraternity and sorority life, as well as introduce them off the bat to what it's like to be involved and give them resources, as well as provide them with an opportunity to get to know the community off the bat. And especially if you're working with a smaller cohort model, it allows people to get to know more individuals within the community on a close basis as compared to briefly meeting the entire community of new members all at once.
All right, so going off of the education topic. So we know by looking at the headlines in the news that fraternities and sororities have been associated with a number of incidents, especially in the recent months, including some student deaths and alleged rapes and sexual assaults. Luckily, we haven't had any drastic things like student deaths occur at Pacific, but we do want to make sure that we make risk management a visible priority for our office. A really easy way to do that is to create a Gamma peer education group. And Gamma is an acronym. It stands for Greeks Advocating for the Mature Management of Alcohol. And it has over 1,000 groups nationwide. There was one at Berkeley when I was there. All right, so Gamma would be led by undergraduate student leaders. On Gamma, ideally there would be the risk manager for the Panhellenic Council, Interfraternity Council, and Multicultural Greek Council, and they would be advised by a graduate student. What Gamma would do on campus is basically create alcohol education programs and programs for alcohol-related harm education, including sexual assault and hazing, to bring to chapters and members of the community from one of their own, instead of being talked at from a staff member or graduate student. Along the same vein, another group that could be formed is GASA, which is Greeks Against Sexual Assault. This again would be a peer-led and peer educating group. And GASA is also a national group like Gamma, and their main focus is addressing the growing concern about sexual assault and providing support for survivors. Having these two groups be peer educated in nature means that the active members would be receiving specific Greek targeted information from their friends and people that are their own age who can relate to them. In theory, this would help them make meaning of the educational programs easier. And also the student leaders that would be volunteering time for Gamma and GASA, since they're the ones that are leading the group and delivering the programming, they would be gaining a lot of leadership experience and confidence with this subject. All right, so another recommendation that we have is providing more opportunities for alumni engagement and support of the chapters here. One of the main reasons that people give to potential new members when they ask why they should join a fraternity or sorority is the alumni network and ability to use that network for job searching and networking as a whole. However, this doesn't seem to be a priority for the office here. It's more up to the chapters on their own to connect with their alumni and hold any kind of events for them. Most notably, alumni come back on homecoming weekend to visit the chapter facility and maybe go to a chapter-sponsored event or reunion if there is one. However, it is notable that people do have connections within other organizations that we want to foster as a Greek unity aspect. So having a larger alumni network and having larger gatherings of more than one organization would be beneficial to the whole community. Some really small things that could happen right away to further this would be creating an alumni contact database, getting them engaged more on social media, sending out some kind of newsletter, and even encouraging them to give to the Greek Life office to fund programs or scholarships.
Next, we want to talk about the advising that goes into these student groups. And some ways that we can better support them through several types of advisors. So our first recommendation within that is to have each Greek letter chapter have a faculty member serve on their advisory board. We know that there are perceptions about Greek life organizations, and some do come from faculty members, not all, but I think it'd be really important for, one, our faculty to really understand the operations of these organizations if they're unfamiliar. A lot of our organizations were founded on scholarship and academic excellence, and so to have a faculty member in the room really advising them in their social and academic development would be really key. Another really successful thing is that faculty can help them with resources on campus. They can also help them with long-term planning. As faculty members are doing research and creating curricula, they can really show how to map out success and have small wins throughout the way.
All right. Another thing that would be really awesome to implement is a uniform risk management education, either seminar or module system, for chapter officers and chapter advisory teams. Currently, there isn't anything of this nature. We know that each organization has their own risk management policies from their headquarters, and also Pacific Housing Office has its own risk management policies for the chapters that are housed by the university. But there's not any kind of uniform education or handbook given to any chapter officers or advisors. We think it's really important that we bring everyone together at the table to talk about pressing issues like hazing, alcohol, sexual assault and consent, how to host a party responsibly, especially since most of our problems seem to come from those kind of things that could easily be addressed. Having everyone on the same page and being in the same place to ask questions so everyone's getting the same information is really vital to having a well-trained chapter officer system and advisors, so we can make sure that everyone is safe on campus.
We'd also like our professional Greek organizations to have better advising. So like I mentioned before, social organizations are what is housed right now within the Greek Life Office. Professional Greek organizations are ones that were founded with a specific academic interest. So here on this campus we have a lot, including pre-dental, chemistry, biology, English, kind of all types of academia. But right now these groups are housed within student activities and campus organizations, and so there are over 100 student organizations on campus, and no one really advising them specifically. And this has led to, in the past few years, some issues with these groups regarding their membership processes, any potential hazing that has come to the conduct office. And we believe that if they were put under the Greek Life Office and had the same amount of advisement and continual support and face-to-face interactions with staff members who care about their well-being, their success, and their future, that it would provide better results. As these organizations do somewhat run as a social group, they host their own events and all that, and so there's a lot of campus resources and knowledge that the Greek Life Office could provide them to keep them on the right track.
Alright, so how are we going to implement all of these recommendations? We decided to use Cotter's 8-step plan, and the following slides enumerate each of the 8 steps, and we'll talk about how specifically we'll go about implementing them through each of the steps. So the first step is establishing a sense of urgency, which means unfreezing the organization by creating a compelling reason for why change is needed. As we said earlier in the introduction, the Greek Life institution and the nation has been facing a lot of challenges lately. We want to make sure that we're ahead of the curve and providing resources and support for our students to hopefully prevent any of those terrible things from happening here. Step 2 is creating a guiding coalition. Obviously, the Greek Life Office staff would be in play here, as well as housing. We also want to make sure that we have diverse viewpoints on campus from a lot of student life groups, like the Multicultural Center, the Women's Center, New Student and Family Programming, ASUOP, and other constituents that would go into creating these recommendations to be successful. Step 3 is developing a vision and strategy. To our knowledge, there isn't any kind of long-term strategic plan for the Greek Life Office here, so that would be a priority before any of the recommendations were adopted. We'd want them to come up with where they want the community to be, how exactly they want to get there, what's the timeline, and then seeing which of our recommendations fit in with that.
Next is to communicate the change vision. So we would want to create and implement a communication strategy that is consistent and that communicates the vision and strategic plan. That communicates it to the active members, so the students that we're currently serving, so they know where we're heading and that they need to get on board with us, but also to be able to communicate that to our other campus departments, faculty, staff, administration, so that we're proving that there really is a purpose to these organizations and to the office in general. Step 5 is to empower broad-based action. And so we have a lot of recommendations, and to create a strategic plan can be a bit daunting, and so we need to empower others to create some buy-in so that this action really takes place. And so for some of that, we are going to be talking to the students and what information is really going to be best given from the students to their peers. So creating some empowerment there as far as holding each other accountable. We're also going to ask, like Katie mentioned, the other departments on campus for some of that, as some of the work we do really affects those student populations, especially looking at first-year students, especially looking at student leaders. So really empower action to be taken on all fronts in support of the strategic plan that we create.
A really important aspect of any kind of long-term plan is generating short-term wins. This not only gives people confidence by saying, yeah, we did that and it was really successful, but also gives people the motivation to keep going. So one of the recommendations that could give us a short-term win is, would we look at the budget and staffing for the sorority formal recruitment period. From our experience, we know that with a lot less staff and budget toward that staff, we can still have a successful recruitment period, and the student leaders would probably get a better experience because they would have more responsibility and feel more accountability to each other, and they would have feel more ownership over the process instead of having a lot of staff there. So we would be able to show that even with less resources going toward and less staffing going towards sorority recruitment, we'd still have a successful process, and that would show the sorority community in particular that our office knows what they're doing and that these changes can work. And building up these short-term wins is consolidating the gains. We're saying, look at all these different things we did, they're working, and hopefully that will add more buy-in from students and other stakeholders on campus so that we can keep going with the strategic plan and produce more systemic change, like adding the professional groups to the Greek Life office, because that's a huge shift. And lastly, after all the changes have been implemented, that we want to make sure that they last. So we anchor new approaches in the culture by ensuring that officer transitions between council leaders, since they're normally only on council for 1 or 2 years, the staff needs to ensure that these officers communicate the expectations and give notes to the new officers, as well as advisory teams that they're communicated with. And we make sure that we're using positive language with them, and that we're keeping the culture going.
So as specific as we're looking at what it's going to be like in the next 10 to 20 years, and as Greek Life on a national level is looking at this as well, it's important for the Greek Life office here to be considering where are we going in our future and how are we going to do that, and what's going to make sure that we maintain the relevance of Greek letter organizations on this campus, as well as we make sure that these organizations are still ones that positively develop the students who are members of them. So by providing these recommendations, we can provide greater accountability for our students, create more development opportunities for them, as well as make sure that we're providing a positive and secure environment for every student who is associated or connected or even attends a fraternity or sorority event. Because it's not just about the safety of the members of the community, it's about the safety of the larger community as well. So that is our presentation. Woo! Thank you for your time, and we hope the rest of the presentations go well in class.
Bye. Thank you.